Hello and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the auroras, Aurora Borealis and Aurora Australis. What is an aurora? An aurora is basically a display of lights in the sky. It is when light is dispersed in the night sky and it is seen especially in the high latitudinal regions like Arctic as well as Antarctic. It is formed by the collision of energetically charged particles with atoms which are present in high altitudes of the atmosphere. They are mostly formed in high latitudinal zones, which includes the northern and the southern latitudes, above the temperate zones, which is less frequent in the middle latitudes, as also they are seldomly seen near the equator. The colors which appears in the auroras are milky greenish color, also sometimes a red, blue, violet, pink as well as white. These colors appear to be in variety of shapes and forms. Auroras, how they are formed, they result from the emission of photons from the Earth's upper atmosphere, that is above 80 kilometers from the surface, from ionized nitrogen atoms which are regaining an electron, and from electrons which are coming from oxygen and nitrogen atoms, returning from unexcited state to ground state. In simple words, what happens is that in ionosphere, which is the outer layer of the atmosphere, the ions of solar winds they come from the photosphere of the sun, and when they collide with the atoms of oxygen and nitrogen from the earth's atmosphere, there is a release of energy due to this collision, which causes a colorful glowing halo, especially around the higher latitudes near the poles, which are called as auroras. Auroras occur around 60 to 620 miles above the Earth's surface. The main reason behind these auroras are the solar winds, which are coming from the outer surface of the sun, photosphere, which contain charged photons and electrons, which excite oxygen and nitrogen atoms and causes these auroras. So the color of the auroras depend upon the atoms which are excited and generated, and when the electrons return from excited state to the ground state. Now auroras are spectacular sign which tells us that the planet Earth is electrically connected with the sun. So basically these lights are originated by the energy which comes from the sun and is fueled by electrically charged particles which are trapped in the Earth's magnetic field. Auroras are basically formed when there is fast moving electrons from the space and they get activated and charge the oxygen and nitrogen atoms of the Earth's atmosphere. The electrons which are coming from the Earth's magnetosphere, the region of the space controlled by the Earth's magnetic field, transfers this energy to oxygen and nitrogen atoms and molecules and making them excited. As these gases return to their normal state, they emit photons, which is a small burst of energy in the form of light. So when large number of electrons which are coming from the magnetosphere is bombarding the atmosphere and interacting with oxygen and nitrogen, emits enough light for our eyes to detect, and beautiful auroras are displayed. Coronal mass ejection. Coronal mass ejection is a significant release or exhibit of plasma and accompanied by the magnetic field from the solar corona. Corona is the outermost layer of the sun's atmosphere, which ejects billions and tons of coronal material. This material carries an embedded magnetic field of its own, which is frozen in flux. This coronal mass ejection is much more stronger than the background solar wind. They follow the path of the solar flares when there is a solar eruption. The plasma is then released into the solar wind and can be observed and detected by a coronagraph imagery. These coronal mass ejections are mostly originated from active regions which are present on the Earth's photosphere or the surface, which acts as groupings on the sunspots associated with frequent flares. When there is a solar maxima, the sun produces about 3 CMEs every day, and whenever there is a solar minima, there is only 1 CME, which is in 5 days. Now, the solar flares and the coronal mass ejections are all driven by the magnetic connections happening within the sun's corona. Now, the magnetic reconnection is basically a process where opposite polarity of magnetic field lines they connect, and some of the magnetic energy is then converted into heat energy and also kinetic energy, which leads to the building of heat energy and solar flares and solar jets. Halloween solar storms, which are a series of consecutive solar flares and coronal mass ejections, which occurs mainly between October and early November, and it had been detected mostly in the year 2003. This series of storms, which was generated in the year 2003, was the largest amongst all the solar flares which were recorded by the GOES, which is Geostationary Operational Environmental Satellites. During this Halloween solar flares and storms, satellite based systems and communications are highly affected. Aircrafts are advised to avoid high altitudes near the polar regions. In the northern hemisphere, that is, northern latitudes, this effect is known as Aurora Borealis, which means the northern lights, which was named after the Roman goddess of dawn, Aurora. And Borealis comes from the Greek name of north wind, Boreas. This was named as Aurora Borealis by Pierre Gassendi in 1621. The northern lights were known by different names in different centuries. The Greeks called them as the dance of the spirits, especially in Europe and the Middle Ages. The auroras were commonly believed to be the sign from the gods. Aurora borealis often occurs near the winter equinox when the nights are very dark and long. The same kind of occurrences occur in the South Pole near the southern latitudes, which are at high altitudes, especially in regions near Tasmania and large parts of Australia, as well as in New Zealand. These are southern lights, which usually occurs in the winter season of southern hemisphere between May and August, which are called as Aurora Australis.